When he was born, he was such an adorable son. I poured so much love into him, and my husband and I should have raised him right. Why did it come to this? John grins from ear to ear with sheer delight. Sorry, Mom. His wife, Rose, acts as if she owns the place, lounging on the sofa my husband loved so much. Leave the inheritance and house procedures to me. I stared at them with a stern face. To add insult to injury, John laughs. You should just stay in a facility, Mom. Even if seeing him again this time is after a long period, I understand the behavior of my child. At least things won't go the way you two think. Don't underestimate your parents. I'm Emily, 75 years old. My husband of the same age and I have overcome various hardships in our lives. And most of that is because of my eldest son. When he was little, he was so precious that it wouldn't hurt even if I put him in my eye. Where did I go wrong? My eldest son, John, turned into a major problem child. I gave birth to John when I was 35. Even before we got married, my husband, Mike, had his own business. And after our marriage, I helped him. Thus, our personal lives were extremely busy. Sometimes we had to work almost without sleeping. That's why we had decided to have only one child from the start. We knew he might feel lonely without any siblings, but we vowed together to raise him with love and care so he wouldn't feel that way. We made sure not to spoil him too much while taking good care of him. We taught him manners like how to hold a fork and knife, how to sit properly, and how to use polite language, among other things. We hoped that John would never face difficulties in the future and would be loved and cherished by many, leading a happy life. The overwhelming love I felt when he first said, "I love you, Mom and Dad," is indescribable. Time truly flies. John grew up so quickly. Of course, like any child, he had his whims, but as his mother, I saw him as an obedient, intelligent, and kind child. However, a change began in John at some point. It started around the time he entered high school. By his choice, he enrolled in a common school nearby. Since elementary school, he had loved baseball and joined a local baseball team, and he seemed happy. Then one day, he shared joyous news with us. "I have a girlfriend now," John said, blushing and looking a bit shy. My husband and I found this adorable, and we were happy not only that he had a girlfriend, but also that he shared the news with us. "I see. Take good care of her. Make sure you don't hurt her." To my husband's words, John nodded. I felt a bit sad, but it should have been a very joyous event, or so we thought. From then on, John began to change. He started devoting everything to his girlfriend. It might sound romantic, but it was beyond what we as parents had imagined. First, John quit the baseball team. We wondered, after putting so much effort into it, why? And when we asked John, the reason he gave was, to us, quite surprising. "I want money and time to hang out with my girlfriend," John said nonchalantly. He's a teenager in the throes of adolescence. I understand that feeling. However, to give up baseball, which he had been passionate about since elementary school, just for that reason? Without thinking, I asked, "Are you sure about that?" But John showed no signs of regret. If he says he wants to quit, there's nothing we can do. We tried persuading him several times, but it seemed John's mind was made up, so we gave up. With his team activities gone, John began to work part-time jobs. After school, he would either work or spend time with his girlfriend. He came home late and showed no signs of studying. Before we knew it, John, who was initially a top-performing student, was now scoring so low on tests that it was easier to count from the bottom. We couldn't stay silent about this. My husband and I sat a reluctant John down for a talk. It's fine to spend time with your girlfriend. I'm not saying you shouldn't work. But right now, you're being incredibly foolish. My husband wasn't angry, nor was he disgusted. He was genuinely concerned for John. We explained to John how neglecting his studies now could limit his future possibilities. Having more options in life is always better. Otherwise, by the time you find something you want to do, it might be too late or impossible. My husband, who had given up on going to college in the past, didn't want John to go through the same regret. He was earnestly trying to convey this message. We hoped John would reconsider, but John responded with a sarcastic smile. I don't care about all that. My future is already decided. I'm going to make a living in music with Rose. Rose is the name of his girlfriend. Music? I asked, to which John nodded proudly. We're making music together now. I don't want to work desperately like you and Mom. I want to have fun and earn with Rose. Such a naive way of thinking. Upon asking in detail, it seems he was persuaded by her and thought, that's a great idea. Only a handful of people can make a living from music. Yet, discarding other options at this point is way too risky. I tried to convey this to John, but he didn't take it to heart. Instead, it seemed he thought we were trying to separate him from his girlfriend. From that day on, John started to avoid us. His grades kept dropping, and we received more and more calls and requests for meetings from the school. His behavior also worsened. We tried to talk to John multiple times, but if he's avoiding even a conversation, there's no way we could change him. Just listen, you can't go on like this for your own sake. Think hard about it. John, you'll regret this, please. It might be presumptuous, but we were desperate for John to reform. Yet, John just mocked us. I won't have any regrets. I won't ever become a worn-out adult like you guys. I don't want to. In the end, despite our attempts, John quit high school. I can't count how many times my husband and I cried back then. I never imagined that John, who used to be so sweet, would not even listen to us. And then one day it happened. My husband kept important documents he used for work in a safe. Only he and I knew the combination to the safe. We also kept a significant amount of cash inside for emergencies. And one night, it disappeared. It was definitely there the previous evening, but suddenly it was gone. Without that, I can't get the loan. It has to be somewhere, I'm sure of it. We searched desperately together but couldn't find it. We had to take various measures, but it was in vain. As a result, the company lost its trust and couldn't recover, eventually going bankrupt. What will we do now? It's okay. Fortunately, we can manage to pay back the debt. I also have a potential job lined up. Let's work hard. My husband was employed by a small to medium-sized enterprise, and I took a clerical job. Together, we managed to pay off the debt. Around this time, John was 20. He had been moving between Rose's and other friends' places and seldom came home. When he heard about the company's bankruptcy, John said, "I'm moving out." "What? You guys have debt, right? That's messed up. I don't want to get dragged into it. So, goodbye." I didn't even feel like stopping him anymore. And just like John said, we felt guilty at the thought of dragging him into our problems in the future. We, as a couple, decided to support each other. A few years later, with an invitation from my husband's friend, he became a business owner again. While luck played a role, due to hard work, the company's management was flourishing. We paid off all the debts and even managed to build a house. We both felt relieved, realizing that hard work does pay off. Emily, thank you for sticking with me through this. No, Mike, thank you for working so hard. We never found out what happened to the documents and money that disappeared from the safe that day. A decade passed, and my husband departed this world before me. Despite everything, I truly felt blessed to have spent this time together. With that thought, I couldn't stop my tears even after the funeral. The sense of loss from losing my husband was overwhelming. I had barely had any contact with John since he left home. I debated inviting him to the funeral, but I didn't even have his contact information. Plus, I didn't have that energy, so I decided not to invite him. The day after the funeral, a couple with vivid pink hair and flashy clothes visited me while I was still shedding tears. "Who are you?" Hearing my question, the couple burst into laughter. "Seriously? You don't recognize me? That's crazy." I didn't realize it at first, but his words jogged my memory. The man in front of me was John. "What do you want?" "Geez, Mom, you're so cold. This is a cheerful reunion." The woman beside him burst into laughter again. "And who might you be?" "Oh, you never met Rose, have you?" Despite it being our first meeting, Rose chuckled lightly. I didn't find her very pleasant. "We're already married, so she's your daughter-in-law. Great, right?" Faced with the giggling pair, I felt a surge of anger. I even couldn't care less about the marriage. I wasn't in the mood to deal with people like these. "If you have no business here, please leave." "We do have business. Dad passed away, right? That's why we're here." "What?" John smirked. Knowing all he did, how can he be so nonchalant? Just thinking about my husband makes my eyes tear up. "Look at this huge house you built over time. You must be loaded, huh? I can't wait for the inheritance. I just couldn't wait and had to come over." "Excuse me?" After being away for a decade without any contact, he just walks in and demands an inheritance. Unbelievable. I was boiling with rage. "Get out. There's nothing here for you." John waved his hand dismissively. "You're so naive, Mom. Inheriting is a child's right. Even if you refuse, it's inevitable." The eldest son and his wife were smirking the entire time, but they said, "We'll be back, be prepared," and left. If this goes on, everything my husband left behind will be taken away by them. I don't want to hand it over to John in this state. Forgetting my sorrow, I started to act urgently. I contacted everyone I knew and explained the situation. And I decided to try a certain method. A few days later, the couple returned. Come to your senses. I want to discuss the inheritance. Fine, come in. I invited the eldest son and his wife inside. OMG, this house is so huge. Wow, I want it. I want to live here. As if she was touring the place, Rose looked around every corner of the house. If I recall, she was John's classmate, which means she's around 30. Acting this way at her age? Annoyed, I invited them to sit on the sofa. So, what have you been up to all these years? A bit of this and that. Did some things I shouldn't have, had some close calls. Despite his casual tone, his smirk was quite off-putting. It's hardly something to brag about. What about work? Do you have any kids? I take day jobs whenever I feel like it. No kids. We're not into that, right? John and Rose exchanged glances. Exactly. Kids are such a hassle. If Owen's child ended up like us, that would be a total nightmare. No doubt about it. The couple burst into loud laughter. Right, about the inheritance. I have discussed it with Mike, and there's someone else we want to give it to. What? John's expression suddenly turned serious, and he leaned in toward me. What do you mean? There's a will, so your share might be reduced. I thought you should know. The once laughing couple was now visibly shaken. By how much? I don't know. I'm just keeping the will. I haven't looked inside. The couple fell silent. They must have been really counting on that inheritance. Working day-to-day jobs means they don't have a stable income, so it might be a given. I'll contact you when we look at the will. Just leave your contact information. John and I exchanged contact information. After everything was done, I urged him to leave quickly. John glanced around the room and then looked at me. By the way, where are you keeping the will? It's none of your concern. Don't worry, it's safely stored. I briefly glanced at the safe at the back of the room. Seeing this, John smirked in satisfaction. Well then, I'll be coming again. I felt like sprinkling holy water at him, but that would be wasteful. I had probably given John and his wife enough bait for today. Now, I'll see if they act according to my expectations. It'll be alright. It has to be, right? I murmured to myself, as if speaking to my late husband. The next day, John visited again, this time alone. You were here just yesterday. We don't have anything new to discuss. Why are you here? You're so cold, Mom. We're the only family each other has left. Let's get along. Look, I bought apples. Peel them for me. John handed me a plastic bag. Inside were 5 bright red apples. This many? I love apples. Come on, peel them for me, just like the old times. I sighed and said, fine, getting up and heading to the kitchen. Peeling 5 apples would take a while. The fact that he specifically brought these. Surely John intended to do something today. Everything was going according to plan, but a sense of emptiness and unease spread within me. If possible, I wanted to trust John. After I finished peeling the apples and returned to the living room, John was nowhere to be found. John! I shouted, and my voice echoed throughout the room. A flustered John came rushing back. He looked quite panicked and was sweating. Oh, what's wrong? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Apples, apples. As John munched on the apple with a crunchy sound, I held my fork and said, "Let's eat." 2 days later, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood my eldest son and his wife, accompanied by a man in a suit. "May I help you?" "Nice to meet you. My name is Eren." The man, introducing himself as Eren, smiled slightly. Why are you here, Mr. Eren?" "I'm an attorney. Today I've accompanied John as per his request." I scrutinized Eren from the top of his head to the tips of his toes. I observed him, literally glaring at him. "I see. So, without any appointment, my eldest son and his wife, along with you, thought it was appropriate to visit me this early in the morning, right? All right then, come in." Thank you and sorry for the inconvenience," Eren said, looking somewhat awkward as he took off his shoes. As the four of us sat around the table, Eren began to speak. "Today I'm here to discuss the inheritance of your late husband. I'm afraid of the sudden visit." "Yes, a phone call would have been appreciated, so what is it?" This time Eren continued without changing his expression. "Your eldest son and his wife would like to review the will. Where might it be?" "That's quite a bold request. The will is stored in the safe." Eren and John exchanged glances and nodded. "May I proceed to verify it then?" Eren, with a big smile, stood up. The eldest son and his wife also followed suit and stood up. Excuse me, ma'am, the will." Probably because I remained seated, Eren gave an awkward smile and tilted his head. "Please stop acting like a polite person. Call me Emily. Do we need to see the will right here and now?" Eren lowered his eyebrows as if in distress and looked at John as if seeking help. John sighed and spoke to me. "I'm the son of the deceased, aren't I? I have the right to see the will too. Hurry up." Reluctantly, I got up and we all headed towards the safe. When I opened the safe, I took out an envelope from inside. As Eren tried to take it from me, saying, "I'll check it now," I quickly pulled it away. "Don't touch it without permission. I'll check it first." Although Eren looked a bit annoyed, he said, "Understood. Go ahead." And his face returned to a smile. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper. "Mike hereby bequeaths as follows." Below that, there were details about land, buildings, and bank accounts. After reading its contents, I bit my lower lip. "What does it say?" John snatched the will from my side and exclaimed with joy. "Ah, yes! Look at this! Everything is bequeathed to John!" John, visibly excited, handed it to Eren. Eren stared at it intently and nodded. "Yes, that's correct. Anyway, the predetermined share will also go to Emily. So please rest assured." Rose wrapped her arm around John's neck, squealing in excitement. "Yeah, I'm so excited! So this house is all ours? This is amazing!" "Thank me, it's all thanks to my father," I asked Eren while verifying the will. "Is this telling me to leave the house?" Eren nodded firmly. "Yes, that's right, because this house will be inherited by John." John grinned, looking extremely pleased. "Sorry, Mom." Rose, fully treating the place as her own, sprawled out on the sofa. "Leave the inheritance and house procedures to me." I stared at the scene with a serious face. "Once I leave this house, what should I do?" John pretended to think with his arms crossed, then suddenly exclaimed as if he had an idea. "Mom, you should go to a facility." "John, you're so evil." As Rose burst out laughing, John also couldn't help but laugh. They seemed to be in high spirits. Upon closer inspection, even Edan was laughing along with them. I'd had enough. I approached John aggressively. "What, are you going to kneel?" "No way. Even if you do, I won't give in." "Can't help it. I got the inheritance rights." "Huh. None of you have the right to inherit." The previously lively room fell silent in an instant. "What?" I finally managed to crack a smile here. Things were going so much according to plan that I couldn't help but laugh. "You see, if a will is unlawfully destroyed or forged, the right to inherit is revoked." John's face turned pale and he froze. Forged? What are you talking about?" I showed the will to Eran. "This is a fake, isn't it? You should recognize it, right, Eran? You're a lawyer after all. Or are you just as fake as this?" Eran stumbled over his words. "Well, I mean, I knew it from the start. This man was a fraud that John brought along. He's not a real lawyer. The real will is right here." I showed the envelope I took from the drawer, and John's eyes widened in shock. Why is it there? I thought I burnt it. Wait, did I?" "I thought you might switch the real will with a fake one after unlocking the safe, so I placed a decoy inside in advance." John stood there, mouth agape. "I deliberately didn't change the safe's code. You opened it before, didn't you?" Looking into John's eyes, they wavered. Soon he averted his gaze. "Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, you guys shouldn't have any business here now. Please leave." John stood there, stunned. Rose was clinging to the sofa, exclaiming, "No way! I'm staying here!" "If you're not leaving, I have no choice but to call the police." Upon hearing this, the elder son and his wife shuddered and trembled. "Is it really hopeless? I won't receive anything at all?" I nodded slowly. "By the way, just to confirm one more time, you two don't have any children, right?" "I told you we don't. I even got my period yesterday." "That's a relief." Confused, John tilted his head and asked, "A relief?" So I explained, "If you had a child, there might have been a chance they could inherit something. Now I can be at ease." "Is that so?" The elder son and his wife drooped their shoulders in disappointment and crumbled on the spot. Afterward, I formally completed the inheritance proceedings. I had recorded everything that day, anticipating that the elder son and his wife might cause trouble. Surprisingly, John readily admitted to forging the will. Later on, John visited me just once. He spoke with a serious tone. "Mom was right. I was the one who opened that safe. I used the cash. I burned the stacks of documents." He apparently hadn't expected that such an act would lead to bankruptcy. He said the safe opened when he typed something in casually. The passcode was John's birthday. "I'm really sorry," he said, hanging his head. His voice trembled. But when he raised his head, His face seemed to have cleared up. By the way, it seems he broke up with Rose. After discovering Rose's affair, they got a divorce immediately without any property division. As for me, I am taking my time at home, reminiscing about my husband. I have settled the past, and there's no longer any lingering unrest. Emily expressed a faint hope. Now that he's broken up with that girl, I wonder if John will return to being the decent person he once was. She smiled to herself. What John did was unforgivable, but as a parent, hope is something hard to let go of. Her husband must have felt the same. That's probably why he left such a will. In the real will, John's name was firmly written. Aside from the house she lived in, he intended to pass everything else to John. We're both such doting parents, aren't we? Imagining her husband's reaction in heaven, she laughed again.